This is an HB 3 and 30 webinar about the small and mid-sized district allotment for school districts. I'm Amy Copeland, Assistant Director of State Funding at the TEA. Other TEA staff assisting with the content of this presentation include Leo Lopez, Associate Commissioner for School Finance, Al McKenzie, Director of Forecasting and Fiscal Analysis, and Nora Rainey, our FSP Operations Manager. This presentation will cover background information that explains why the state moved away from small and mid-sized adjustments and moved towards small and mid-sized allotments. We'll also go over the formulas the way they existed before and the way the formulas work now as a result of HB 3. Let's begin with some background about why the structure of the small and mid-sized allotment changed. In 2018, the Texas Commission on School Finance met on several occasions and arrived at 35 separate recommendations. One of these recommendations was to recreate the small and mid-sized district adjustments as standalone allotments. Texas was just one of 3 states that placed these types of district adjustments at such an early point in the formula, and after much deliberation, it was recommended that to help with public transparency surrounding the investments in small and mid-sized districts, and most importantly to streamline formulas by separating student-centric weights from district-centric weights. This recommendation aligned with other recommendations surrounding student needs. With the small and mid-sized district formulas recreated as a standalone allotment, one of the benefits is complete clarity regarding how much a school district receives for being small or mid-sized, without having the amount mixed up with other student weights and adjustments. While specific Tier 1 allotments, excluding the special education allotment, may have decreased as a result of the change, these decreases were offset by the new standalone allotment. Next, we'll step through the small and mid-sized district adjustments prior to HB 3. A district's Tier 1 allotment was derived by increasing the basic allotment of $5,140 per student by certain district characteristics, including the district's CEI and a small or mid-sized factor if applicable. And that amount, known as the adjusted allotment, was used in a series of formulas that recognized student characteristics. Prior to HB 3, there were 7 Tier 1 allotments that used the adjusted allotment to calculate funding. Note the high school allotment, NIFA, and transportation were calculated independent of the basic allotment. As will be shown later in the presentation, HB 3 brought about changes to existing allotments alongside some new Tier 1 allotments. Let's step through the formulas under prior law. First, we begin with the mid-sized district adjustment, or the MDA. The MDA was applicable to school districts with fewer than 5,000 students, and as shown in the formula on this slide, resulted in varying levels of funding depending on the number of students in the district. As we'll see later on in a few slides, the per student dollar amount decreased as student enrollment approached 5,000 students and vice versa. The adjusted allotment was used to calculate a district's Tier 1 allotments. The following slides cover the small district adjustments prior to HB 3. The small district adjustment, or the SDA, was applicable to school districts with fewer than 1,600 students, and as shown in these formulas, resulted in varying levels of funding depending on the number of students in the district. There were 2 variations on the formulas, depending on the number of square miles in the district. This adjusted allotment was used to calculate a district's Tier 1 allotments. As mentioned earlier, there were 2 versions of the SDA, depending on whether or not the district was above or below 300 square miles. In 2017, the legislature did away with this distinction and put in place a 6-year phase-out of one of the formulas. HB 3 accelerated this phase-out and, effective for fiscal year 2020, established the funding factor of 0.0004 for all districts regardless of the number of square miles. This chart visually shows how the formulas worked as enrollment changes. The x-axis represents enrollment and the y-axis represents dollars. The blue and the green lines represent the small district adjustments, and the blue line is the one that was scheduled to slowly increase to the level of the green line. The orange line represents the mid-sized district adjustment. The reasons why you see the amounts are so much higher for smaller districts on the left side of the chart is to account for the diseconomies of scale that occur with districts with extremely small levels of enrollment, and the fact that there are certain fixed costs that cannot be spread or absorbed over large amounts of students. Now we'll step through the small and mid-sized district allotment under HB 3. As a result of HB 3, a district's Tier 1 allotment is derived using an increased basic allotment of $6,160 per student and is no longer increased by certain district adjustments. Instead, the small or mid-sized allotment is provided as a separate allotment, and the small and mid-sized formula does not affect other funding except special education. The basic allotment, not the adjusted allotment, is then used in a series of formulas that recognize student characteristics, except for special education, which uses the small and mid-sized adjustments. As mentioned previously, prior to HB3, there were 7 Tier 1 allotments that used the adjusted allotment to calculate funding. HB3 brought about changes to existing allotments alongside some new Tier 1 allotments. The list on the right shows the allotments under HB3. All the allotments use the increased basic allotment of $6,160 to calculate funding, except for special education, which uses the small and mid-size adjustments. Allotments denoted with an asterisk were expanded or increased, and 3 new allotments were added to Tier 1, including a dyslexia allotment, early education allotment, and fast growth allotment. These are additional new Tier 1 allotments. But like the old high school allotment, these allotments are not calculated using the basic allotment. Now let's step through the formulas under HB3. First, we begin with the Midsize District Allotment, or the MDA. The MDA is applicable to school districts with fewer than 5,000 students, and as shown in this formula, results in varying levels of funding depending on the number of students in the district. As you can see, the formula is almost identical to prior law, except there are a few less parentheses to account for the fact that this allotment results in an incremental amount of funding, whereas the old formula was designed to arrive at a replacement for the basic allotment, or what used to be called the adjusted allotment. Now let's step through this small district allotment under HB3. The small district allotment, or the SDA, is applicable to school districts with fewer than 1,600 students, and as shown in the formula, results in varying levels of funding depending on the number of students in the district. As I mentioned earlier, there is now no difference in funding based upon square miles, and all small districts above or below 300 square miles receive a funding factor of 0.0004. There is, however, one nuance to the small district allotment. HB3 added a single county small district allotment. The single county small district allotment replaces the standard small district allotment for eligible districts. Districts that have fewer than 300 students and are the only school located and operating in a county receive the benefit of a funding factor of 0.00047, or an additional 0.00007 above the standard allotment. The rationale for this adjustment was to recognize the extreme diseconomies of scale for such districts. This chart visually shows how the formulas work under HB3 as enrollment changes. Once again, the x-axis represents enrollment and the y-axis represents dollars. The blue and the green lines represent the small district allotments, and the green line remains the regular small district allotment. The blue line represents the single county small district allotment, and as you can see, only delivers funding up to 300 students in ADA. The orange line represents the mid-size district allotment. Notice on the y-axis, the scale has shifted to represent the incremental amount used in the standalone allotment, whereas the previous chart represented amounts that essentially replaced the basic allotment for use in all other Tier 1 allotments. A new charter allotment was also created by HB3, based on a weighted average of the small and mid-sized district allotment. Interested stakeholders can find more information in next week's webinar on charter school funding. Visit our HB3 webpage regularly to check for the most up-to-date information from TEA on the implementation of House Bill 3, and send any related questions to the designated HB3 email address. This allows the TEA to make questions and answers for various topics available to all interested parties. Thank you for tuning in to this HB3 and 30 webinar. We hope the information is helpful. Please explore our online resources and follow up with any questions as you work through the implementation of HB3.